now. If I'm not mistaken, they have carbon-14 dated the papyrus out of Zimbabwe, that came out of Zimbabwe, and it's older than the papyrus that came out of Egypt. Now, if that's the case, what does that tell us? You know, that it appears that the information and the development that was developing around Zimbabwe is older than the civilization that had developed around Egypt. And then the area of Egypt that everybody's talking about, that's what would be called Lower Egypt.
I was gonna say, but Zimbabwe is just like what Kenya comes between
Yeah,
Egypt and Zimbabwe.
Right.
It's not.
But now the moon, the mountain of the moon, which is Mount Kilimanjaro, is right on a borderline of this whole area, and so that's where the river actually starts, and then it runs north to Egypt.
Because the
Nile.
equator, right?
Well,
South of the equator.
No. That has been a theory. There have been a number of theories about why the river runs north, but most of them are still theories and being proven. You know, in other words, there are all kinds of laboratory work going on where they're really trying to understand. But basically, there's a mountain right there. And once you start understanding how sea level works and this terrain, you know, there may be what do you call it, a grade.
Elevation.
Yes, a grade that's causing the water right there to go to the north rather than to the south.
I think you'll probably find that.
Well, understand
Water runs downhill.
there are different thoughts about what is actually happening to cause this. Now, here's the thing about it, though. Whatever the cause, having to do with the planet Earth, and the river is running in a different direction than all other rivers on the planet. All other rivers on the planet, other than that one, are following what they've established as a law of gravity, dealing with physics. Now, at the same time, you have to understand the laws relative to physics have been changing because they come into newer understanding of information, and information that allows them to understand at another level. So again, the laws of physics once upon a time said that there was no such thing as digital. But now, this is all we're doing. It's all digital. So the laws of physics are changing as man's ability to comprehend and uncover.
I had if I can interrupt, one of my friends that I grew up with from kindergarten on, I had a conversation with him about a year ago, and he's a, what kind of physicist is he? Particle physicist.
A particle physicist.
Yeah. And he's a PhD in particle physics, and he said to me, we were just having a conversation, joking, and he said that he has colleagues, or there are physicists in the world who spend their entire lives doing nothing but trying to disprove Einstein's theory, either disprove or improve on Einstein's theory of relativity. In other words, they make their whole reputations, their careers, everything is based on this one thing, that they're trying to do. And he was laughing about, things, facts and theories. He was saying that they're factual until somebody disproves the fact.
Right.
And another fact arises.
That's right.
So it's very, and I first was made aware of it when I was in graduate school, and I was taking plant physiology, and the discussion had to do with, the cell wall and how things pass through plant cell walls. So, and I noticed that the professor he presented about 5 different theories about how this was taking place. And basically what he said was that none of these are proven. So we really don't know. But, excuse me, all I could think about was what I had been taught over the years, and you just assume that somebody presents you the information, you assume that this is fact, this is what it is, when in reality, a fact is only a fact until it's disproven. Disproven.
Disprove. Okay.
That's how it goes. So now, what has been unearthed is there are all kinds of artifacts coming out of not only Zimbabwe, but the islands, the Pacific Islands, that date much further back than anything that came out of Egypt. And the understanding that went into the artifacts that came out of Egypt, what was this understanding? It was performed by Sir E. Wallace Burroughs. It was performed by Sir Englishmen, these Frenchmen, these Egyptologists. Why should I trust anyone who would now treat people who look like me on this planet in such a fashion where they would destroy them, kill them, murder them? Why should I trust that information? And then I'm going to take that information and I'm going to, half the people that are now coming up with this Egypto about Africa, they're taking what they've learned out of the Bible and they're taking that information and now trying to match it with the information that the Egyptologists had, deciphered out of what they call Egypt based on the translations. This is nonsense. The other thing is no one understood the basic alphabet until after the late 1700s, when the French went in and got the Rosetta Stone. Until after the Rosetta Stone was translated, no one basically really understood these hieroglyphics. It was a bunch of carvings that they were trying to figure out. Now you mean to tell me all of a sudden some Negroes that couldn't graduate from the 8th grade in school, they're reading all these works about something ancient in Africa, and now they figured it all out. They know how to talk like these people talked and what they meant when they said, there's something right here. Something's not. I'm reading some stuff on Facebook. Now all of a sudden you got some Negroes that didn't make it past the 7th grade. All of a sudden they're talking about lexicography and lexicon and etymology but you know that, at least I know, that they're lying. They don't know anything about this. The reason I know that they're lying is because if you start using these thoughts as your proofs to think scientifically, then understand this thought of etymology. This is an old thought. This is nothing brand new. It's an old thought. So now, just like that is an old thought scientifically, so is epistemology. So is etiology and ontology. Now, if you don't use these things where it becomes a corollary and you're using one, just like you do mathematics, the formulas of arithmetic, if you don't use one to either prove or disprove the other, then 9 times out of 10, you don't really know the one, because the formula says that if you're going to add, in order to check your addition, you have to subtract. If you're going to divide, in order to perform the addition, you have to multiply. Is that right? Well, if that's the case, in order to perform etymology correctly, you have to perform epistemology. If you're not going to do it, you're lying. We've got folks all of a sudden jumping up and they know all about this. No, how is it possible? Where did they learn it? At Central High School? I remember the year that they told me they were teaching etymology at Central High School. I bothered to go to Central High School and get the book that they were teaching out of. And when I got through unraveling the book, what I realized is all they did was they created a book and sold a program. And so that they get enough schools to buy this book, then they're making millions of dollars. That's just game. But that's not teaching etymology. You know, when a person actually uses this as a way to research something, and you go in, and let's say you what would you do if you're breaking the word explanation apart?
Explanation.
Explanation.
I first said the syllables.
What syllables?
The syllables X, EX.
All right, so now you gotta go look up X, right?
Yeah.
And what else is there?
You got plane.
You said plane?
Yeah.
And so what does plane take you to?
You have plan,
Plan?
like you make a plan for something.
That's right.
And then you have nation or Asian.
Okay, so if you got
Shun
nation,
makes action.
so shun is a suffix. How many of us know what the suffix shun means? You looked it up? Who's looked it up?
What word?
Shun.
T-I-O-N or I-O-N. I think whenever
State.
you use the
Ion.
suffix,
Infection?
no, T-I-O-N, and there's a suffix, I-O-N, shun, it's not gonna come out ion or eon. That's not gonna happen. It's gonna actually have a meaning. How many of us have ever bothered to look it up? You looked it up. So you mean to, what school were you in that you looked it up?
redpilltraining.ning.com.
Oh. You mean since you started this process?
Of course.
And that's what I'm saying. So all these people who all of a sudden now, they know all about this, where did they learn it from?
Can I just find
I don't know.
T-I-O-N in the dictionary? Can we find T-I-O-N?
I found it.
What does it say?
Shun. Friction. Stem. I-O-E-O. Suffix.
A suffix, what does it tell you about that suffix? What does it say?
It says G-E-N. I apologize. I don't know what that means.
G-E-N, gen. So, if it's, and now you have to understand what G-E-N or gen as a suffix means. I think is in the word oxygen. Is gen a suffix? You gotta go and
Like
find out what
generation.
that is, huh?
A generation of genes.
Well, now in generation, it cannot be a suffix.
Oh, okay, saying suffix. That's right.
It cannot be, not in that word.
All right.
Now, in that word, I'm almost positive
Hydrogen, oxygen.
that it is going
Nitrogen.
to do the same thing that it does in general.
Yeah, G.
So now, if you come across the dictionary where you can't find T-I-O-N relative to it being a suffix, I'm telling you that half the people that are out here talking this stuff, they can't find it either. And if they can't find it, what are they talking about? How are they figuring all this stuff out? I think they're just making things up. Some of this stuff that we're doing, it is taking 25, 30, 35, 40 years of searching, looking, going in libraries. I've been in Chicago Public Library, New York Public Library, all of the libraries around this country looking for the books that would lead me to this information. In other words, at home right now, you got a Latin dictionary, right?
A Latin dictionary?
Yes. That's just a yes or no.
I don't know if I have a Latin dictionary.
You don't even know if you don't know if you have one or not. Now understand what I'm suggesting. Why is it that we're growing up in the United States of America, we're speaking English, the language is composed of probably at least 40% of the language is composed of Latin and Greek, and we don't know anything about a Latin dictionary. In other words, we don't have a dictionary at home. When you open the dictionary everything in there primarily is in Latin. Why not?
Latin is considered an old language.
Oh, Latin is considered an old language. So you mean you should have dictionaries that are dictionaries of old languages.
That's not what I consider, that's what society considers, that's why.
So you should do whatever society considers that you should or should not do, right?
Not all the time.
I don't think you should do it any of the time. Anytime you see a crowd doing anything, you better figure out how to go the other way. And society is a basic crowd. What is a society? You never looked up the word society.
No.
So then tell me why we're sitting around talking about social issues that society suggests that we need to talk about. We don't know what society means, but we're always using this word. That sounds kind of strange to me. Oh, I know what happened. In school, they never told us to go look it up.
It wouldn't have mattered anyway. Just would have looked at the first definition and been done.
So now that automatically tells you you're doing something wrong. You understand? You know, we don't have a slightest clue that a meaning and a definition are not the same thing.
Society,
What about society?
society, a noun. A group of persons regarded as forming a single community.
So now,
Especially-
you mean a group of elders? A group of elders, older people?
A group of persons.
A group of persons. In this case, based on how the word comes into existence, it comes from a group of, matter of fact, I tell you what, look up the word senator.
Hey,
You got companion, good. So you mean to tell me this group of senior citizens are supposed to be your companions? Well, in real life, your grandparents and your parents are supposed to be the people that would actually be your companions. They're the ones who should be your advisors. That's what a senior is supposed to do. And that's why you have the Senate in this country. In this country. In England, where this concept actually was going on before it happened here, it wasn't called that. They were called the House of Lords, Commoners and the House of Lords. Now, who were the lords?
Owners of property.
The lords were the barons.
Yeah.
They're barons, barons and above. And the commoners were the villagers, or the pawns, or peones, or serfs, or yeomen. They're the peasants, workers, proletariat. You found senators. Now go through your etymology. What do you see?
Senators. A noun. Senator, a member of a senate. Senate, noun.
So you don't see senior in there. So that means there's some other work that has to be done.
I got it.
Or you got
Mine
it.
has old or aged,
Mm-hmm.
from the Latin senatus,
That's
senex, old
Now
or aged.
understand, all dictionaries are not gonna have the same thing in them. And before it's over with, you might have 5 or 6 different dictionaries out in front of you as you're doing the research. The word that you started out with was what? Explanation. All right, so you got to deal with X, plan. When you come to plan, I would bet you a dime to a dollar, you're going to come to 2 planes. What are the 2 planes?
X and Y plane.
I like that.
Air and
Well, the plane that you would find up north around Chicago,
water.
it's well, those are planes.
That's what.
That's Plane.
Oh,
But plain is a flat surface. You know, that's why they call it the Midwest, they call it plains. Are you following me? Plaine. But now guess what? It is the same word. Plain and plan. And when you look at plain, Plane, is the same word as Plain. And I'm telling you that once you understand about the E, it's gonna get real tricky. Do you remember being taught in school, E at the end of a word is not pronounced?
Yes, sometimes.
Uh-huh. So now this is gonna get strange. What letters are not pronounced in French at the end of a word?
I do not know. Could you please inform me?
Well, I don't know if I can inform you, but I know what? I know S.
And Z,
And really, S is really tricky because I talk to Negroes all the time, and they always tell me about Illinois.
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 Illinois. You know, or they say Arkansas.
That's the,
Arkansas is a French word also.
yes. Cause
So
I
now-
always, my question was, how is it Kansas and not Arkansas?
It is Arkansas. It is Arkansas. There's a pronunciation Arkansas rather than Arkansas. But to understand something, you have to understand it's not tomato or tomato. It depends on where you come from. It depends on the way you speak and how you pronounce vowels. Then it becomes a question of is it tomato or is it tomato? Is it potato or is it potato? Now at the same time, you have to understand that we're really having some problems with each other based on the way we use the language. But I think in French, isn't the T in a lot of cases not pronounced?
I think it's
In other words, we'll say excrement, but I think in the French, when you say mon, you don't say the T. I'm almost positive that the T at the end of a number of words is not pronounced. But do you notice we're talking about S and T? These are consonants, right?
You know?
A vowel, come on, read the definition of a vowel to me, please. Now this is weird because all of you are very smart and educated people, but you've never looked up the word vowel.
is it
I have.
sound or breath?
It is sound and breath. You had to look that up in school, right?
No, I learned it here.
Oh,
A noun. Any voice, speech, sound characterized by generalized friction of the air passing in a continuous stream through the pharynx and open mouth, but with no constriction narrow enough to produce local friction. The sound of the greatest prominence in most syllables.
yeah.
A letter. As
Good.
A, E, oh well.
Do you know what you just said? What you just said is that if it's a vowel, it makes a sound.
Yep,
That's what you said.
yep.
So how did they teach us in school that the letter E does not make a sound?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
I got you.
They just said, you don't say, like when you have knife, you don't say they just told you what it was. They didn't explain it to you or how you.
So you telling me that we actually go to school and people program things into our brains, but they don't really tell us what it is that it means or what is actually being programmed into our brains relative to a thought. In other words, you remember when they told you long vowel, short vowel?
Yes.
What were they talking about?
They were talking about how you pronounce the vowel when you come across
What
another
were
word.
they talking about? I understand that that's what they told you. What were they talking about?
No.
So now you have to go in and figure out what they were actually doing. See, because at this point, the average teacher that teaches that has no clue why they taught that. Yes.
The first week of school with Righteous, were teaching or asking the question, what is the difference between reality and fantasy? And I was just wondering why they would even put that in the first week of school. This is fantasy and this is reality. And they're really focused on that.
Where did they get the information about the difference? Then in fact,
Wrote it in the
In fact, what did they teach you about the difference between reality and fantasy, Righteous?
What did they say fantasy was?
Fantasy is something that's fake.
Fantasy is something that's fake. And reality is what?
Something that's real.
All right, now, prove it. Did they show you how to prove it? In other words, did they show you how to prove when something is fake or false versus when something is real? So all it is going on is someone wants to program information into our brains, and this is supposed to be teaching. It is not.
So, but in fantasy, it comes from your imagination.
To some degree, we can say that. We can say that. The word fantasy, if I'm not mistaken, it deals with, and if we're really going to talk about the word fantasy, we're going to deal with the word fan and fantastic. Now, we have to start understanding that these words may have been created from colloquial attitudes dealing with a thought, but we've not really investigated reality or when something is real. Give you an example. The car you ride in, is it real?
It's been materialized.
Is what?
It's materialized.
It is. Well, how about this? When you speak the language that you speak, when is the only time that you would use the word real when you're talking about a thing?
I guess when you're describing like that was
What?
a really good.
Call it real.
The only thing that I've ever experienced in my lifetime using this language that is called real, with this language, that is a thing, is real estate. That's it. You can't find anything else that you can actually suggest is real. Not with the language. But now you gotta go in and you gotta figure out what real actually is. Versus, like she said, something dealing with the imagination.
I mean,
So,
with your imagination, I was about to say, but your imagination is not fake.
so now we're gonna have to deal with some other stuff that's
Having to do
gonna,
with fantasy.
well, I'm so happy you're here, son. How did you get here?
Told him I had something to do.
I said, that's something. All right, are we through with the word explanation, or do we need to come back to it? Because it can take years. That is a word that can take, I'm telling you, a long time. So let's come back to the word, since we've made it to another word that we need to deal with. The word imagination, where's Daniel?
Listen to Dr. Black.
Where's that?
Hello. You have to listen to what he's talking about.
What's the first part of the word imagination?
Image.
Image, good. So what is an image?
Picture in your brain.
That's what you say. But now let's do it like this. Have you looked up the word?
I have. I just can't remember. Imago. I think it went back to
Imago, good.
Imago.
You've looked up the word. Imago. You know what this word imago, where it's going to come into usage in written language? You're going to find some articles written about God. And guess what the word is going to be? It's going to be imago.
Form a mental image of.
Other words that you'll find when you're using the word
Is that
God in the language, we're talking about Greek and Latin and other languages, you're using the word God. Like in English, you use God, but in other languages, you may come across the word logos. Now, when you come across the word logo, what could it lead you to, logo? Logic. So in fact, it's God, relative to the word God and how you think about it in English, is it logic? So now, that's what I'm looking for. What's going on, Daniel?
Great.
Well, marvelous.
He and Rice and both came in here with a little frown on their face. And now he's sneering.
Scowling. All right. The thing is that before we would actually get to where we would have to discuss those thoughts about how the word imago and logo, I said, wait a minute, this word logos, where do you find this word beside in some articles about God? Where else do you find it? Logos. You said language, what else? What else? Don't you find it when you're, logos is what? Well, no problem, it's in logic, and you know what?
A word?
The word logos is the word word. That's right.
You find it everywhere then.
Okay, no problem. I bet you that
So
when you
God
wanna,
is word.
God is word. It said in the beginning was the word.
Hey, Doc, are you talking about the word logo or logos?
Logo,